For a great cup of joe, there's one thing you should know. Your morning brew can also be playful. Buff Boy Brewing guys make the temperature rise, and you surely feel naughty when you swallow our coffee. If you want some real heat, give your mouth a fine treat. You will want some more, rest assured. Buff Boy Brewing, you can't get enough of.
It's time for The Scribble, your weekly fix of celebrity chats, bizarre stories in the news, and basic random chatter with best-selling author and syndicated radio host Jeremy Bradley. Make sure your seat is in the upright and locked position and your barf bag is securely in place. Here's Jeremy Bradley.
Thank you very much, Larson. Jeremy Bradley here. This is The Scribble, and it's a sad time, isn't it, everybody? The official end of summer. Oh, moment of silence, moment of silence. You know what's interesting, though, is 4 years ago when I signed off from our syndicated radio shows, I basically retired. So, something like this that you're listening to is kind of we're just doing it for fun. And generally I, sleep in until noon every day. It used to be, this was the funny thing, it used to be that I would sleep in until about 10 o'clock, and then my husband and I, we would wake up at 10. I would go into the bath for 2 hours, and he's a fitness model and bodybuilder, so he would go down if we were in our Canadian house, he has an actual full gym, and I'm not just talking about a bench in the corner and some weights or whatever, we're talking full on. You'd think that you were in a hotel kind of gym, right? So it's a dedicated gym in the house. So I would go to the bathtub and I would, do my emails and whatever. And then he would go and do a 2-hour workout. And then we would reconvene. And at that point, we would probably do lunch or I guess it would be breakfast because we hadn't eaten at that point. But and spend the afternoon together. And so now we wake up at almost noon every day. So it's actually being progressively later the more years that I've been quote unquote retired. So it's interesting to hear people leading into, Labor Day weekend, or I guess even the end of August when school starts for the kids again, to hear people kind of, it's just that pity party, right? It's the sadness that summer is over. Where did it go? And it could also be just because the weather's changing and, it's going to be colder out or whatever. But for whatever reason, there's always just sort of this mourning period, like MOURN, mourning period, after summer or beginning, September. And it's fascinating, though. So once you retire, I'd said this to she's our executive producer, Bonnie Winters. She herself recently retired, even though she's significantly older than I am. But because we like what we do, we still do it. You know what I mean? We don't have to, but she still comes in and helps, produce this podcast. And I come in and tape a bunch of these in one day, and then I don't show my face for another month. So we enjoy it and we do it, and then we're done. But we have no emotional attachment to it, don't get me wrong. But anyway, so I'd said to Bonnie, and her husband Mike had retired several years ago. Well, yeah, many, many years ago, actually, maybe about 10 years ago. And I remember saying to her at the time, because I've known Bon for over 20 years, I said to her, now that you're retired, though, the holiday weekends, the long weekends where, yes, Friday's a holiday, so we get, 3 days off, or, Monday's a holiday, so we get, or there's a holiday on a Wednesday, so we kind of break it up and we do, and I don't even know when it's a holiday weekend anymore. And neither does Bonnie. Well, she's got kids and grandkids, so it's a little bit different for her if they have a family get together or the kids are off school or something. So it means something for her. But she said that's true. I don't wake up and go, oh, Monday. Oh my God. A case of the Mondays. What was that? Office Space, right? Somebody has a case of the Mondays. There was that woman in the office. Because, you come in on Monday at whatever time you start work, 8 o'clock, 8:30, whatever it is. And you just, or Sunday night even. Actually, it starts Sunday night at home. Right? So you had this weekend of doing whatever, going around, social, drinking, staying up late, whatever, you do on the weekend. And then it's that Sunday night where you're kind of like, ugh, here we go. And I sometimes don't even know what day of the week it is. So for me, we wake up at noon on Monday. We do MIMS Monday, by the way. I've talked about that on the show, where we do, on Sunday night, we take up, again, if we're in our Canadian house, our bedroom is upstairs. We take an ice bucket and a carton of orange juice, and then a bottle of, we do cheap champagne, or, like the fizzy wine kind of a thing. We do Mimosa Monday in bed on Monday. So we don't even get out of bed. We literally have it on the table beside us. And, it's on the table. We each have a table on our side of the bed. So it's on his table. And sure enough, you we pop the cork Monday morning, and we have just a quick. Now the thing is, don't get me wrong, it's not like you have the Mims Monday and then you stay in bed for an hour, because after you down that quickly, like, you gotta pee as quick as possible. So yeah, I'm not saying that we do this big romantic hour and a half, lounging in bed sipping champagne. No, you slam that back, and then we're running, downstairs to the bathroom. But same thing like with Friday. I'm not sitting here going, yes, or Thursday. I'm not sitting here going, yes, tomorrow's Friday, finally. Nope, not doing that anymore. It's not in my world. So when we have something like Labor Day, or when we had Canada Day, we were in Canada for Canada Day, which happened to fall on a Tuesday. But a lot of workplaces. You know what? Sorry, we were not in Canada. We were in New York for the Diddy trial. That's right. Okay. So anyway, our Canadian team, though, who's mostly off throughout the summer anyway, had said, well, a bunch of places are taking like Monday, Tuesday off. And I said, but our company, we're very special that we have Canadian and American holidays that we recognize, just because of how many different fields we're in and how many different, colleagues and whatever we have. So that week, because you had Tuesday being Canada Day, July 1st, and then you had Friday being 4th of July, and our team generally doesn't work on Fridays, even though you listen to this every week on Friday. We don't tape it on Friday. But so most of them, if you weren't part of our Diddy coverage in New York, or operating out of our home base in Winnipeg, you had the week off practically, because companies were giving the Monday off just to not break up that, you're going to come in for one day. You're not going to be productive on Monday because you're just coming off a weekend. Tomorrow's a holiday, so you're probably going to duck out early anyway. So people in Canada were getting, a 4-day weekend essentially. And so, for me, people were complaining about the Diddy, better wrap up by 4th of July weekend. We're going to have to come back. And again, not being one of those working stiffs, it didn't matter to me. People were like, oh my God, some friends in Canada were like, oh my God, you're working on Canada Day? I'm like, well, what am I going to be doing anyway? Even if I'd be sitting at home. We don't do the whole, let's go to the big parade, let's go to the fireworks. But we don't care to do that. So, I would have just been sitting at home for Canada Day anyway. Why not be in New York and, cover the Diddy thing and make a shit ton of money for our radio syndication company? Why not do that? So, bottom line, because I know I'm supposed to throw to a break several minutes ago, summer's over and it's back to work. And so I just want to take a moment to remind you how much you hate your job. And that's coming up on the Scribble right after this.
Isn't it crazy that you wait for payday, but before you know it, you're strapped for cash again? It's time to stop blowing your money and become a smart spender with the book, The Official Guide to Being an American Cheapskate, at cheapskatebook.com. Learn simple ways to cut costs at home every day and during special times of the year. Don't go broke at Christmas. Don't remortgage the house for a fancy vacation. The book is filled with tips to save you money throughout the year. Check out the best-selling book, The Official Guide to Being an American Cheapskate, at cheapskatebook.com or on Amazon and iTunes.
JB here on the Scribble. I hope you don't have a case of the Mondays. Or happy Friday, I guess, right? One of the things that I always found really obnoxious working in an office was, obviously there's different personality types, and we, at our company, especially here in Winnipeg, where I'm taping the show today, our team has been together for at least 20 years. I've known, Bonnie Winters, our EP. We worked at a publishing company together for about 2 years, I guess, before I left and then started my own company. And then she came with me. So I've known her for, I guess it would be 21 or 22 years. Anyway, so our group, we are all very, very different people. Bonnie's in her 70s. I am, 43, gay. She's a grandma. Our accountant, Raylene, is a rocker chick at heart. She's, obsessed with the music artist Pink. So she's forever going to concerts and just flying off somewhere. And, she'll go to Phoenix, she'll go to Vegas, she'll go wherever just to see a concert. We have well, Jeannie Jeannie I went to school with. So we've got, she's kind of she's not a fitness nut, but very, very, she's a particular eater. She's she's a tiny, tiny woman, but she's very particular about what she eats. So she's reading, like the label of every single product in the store, and she's telling you, those styrofoam rice cakes have this and that. So not to, again, I'm doing a voice as though she's annoying, which she's not. I wouldn't have. She was my friend from school. I wouldn't have hired her if she's annoying. But what I'm saying is, like, we all have such just different personalities. And by the way, we all work together. So the Raylene, the accountant, Jeannie from my school, Bonnie, we all work together at a publishing company. And we were all so crazy different. We were all editors, by the way. But for some reason, it worked. We were like-minded. There was no competition. We weren't trying to like one-up each other because we each had our own projects. We didn't have to. I mean, there was sort of, kind of overlap if I needed somebody to proofread something or whatever. But there wasn't competing. There wasn't any kind of, who's the favorite editor. It's like, you have your projects, I have mine, and it was sort of like sectioned off. But every afternoon we'd get together in my office, the three of us, and we would. Not the accountant, the three of us editors, and we would do an editing party at 2:00 every day that we would just be, casual. We'd have, feet up, we would take, shoes off, whatever it was. And it really worked. And I've said many times, and I've said that to them since we've been here at my company, that was probably the best work environment that we had. And again, it's because we're creative people. We all kind of have that same mindset. Now, we're not from the same generation. As I said, Bonnie's in her 70s and I'm 43 and Jeannie's 45, I think. Somebody tell me she's 45, 44. And, but we have the same work ethic. We have the same kind of, we're not going to, so, let's say that our start time was 9:00. Okay. It's not, but it's 9:00. So everybody files in. Even when we were at the publishing company, there was not this like 10, 15 minutes of wandering around, chatting and talking. We came in, we sat down in our offices, and, you started listening to voicemail or, checking email, like whatever you were doing, you kind of got down to it. Then, after maybe about an hour of kind of getting settled, but it was just quiet in the morning. Like, it was kind of like, let's all just ease into the day. And I remember really appreciating that because, again, when we worked together, I was I was early 20s almost. So, here I am. We were magazine editors, trade magazine editors. I'd never even done the job before, but they needed somebody. Their previous managing editor had just kind of up and left them. And so Raylene, the accountant, she was the controller there. She's our accountant here, but, she had heard me on the radio, and coincidentally, believe it or not, I lived maybe like a 20-minute walk from their office. So she was listening to a streaming internet station, and I happened to mention Winnipeg one time when she was listening. And so she emailed in and was like, you mentioned Winnipeg, like of all places, that's crazy. And I said, yes, I live in Winnipeg, like that's where I'm from. So we have a bunch of emails back and forth, and then all of a sudden she's like, and you're a newspaper columnist? Like, you're a writer too? This is perfect. Like, can we talk? I know this is weird, but like, can we talk? And so that's really how I ended up getting the job there. I was going to be a temporary fill-in until they got a new managing editor. But we had such a good time that I stayed there for about 3 years. She had left the company. 2 of the other editors left. And then I was kind of like the last man standing. Actually, I was the only man. First of all, the editorial department was all women, but everybody else had just got fed up because when our accountant left, she was awesome to work with. It was the actual like president, the owner, the guy in charge. He was kind of always stepped back though when she was running things. So when she left, it was kind of like, oh, here's this dude now who's just a nightmare to work with. And then eventually it was everybody kind of dropping one by one by one. And then I was the last, and I was like, behind the scenes, I'm going to be working on my own company, going to get this started. And then I was out of there. And so then we reassembled, we regrouped here at my company. So we didn't have I hate loud noise in the morning. So several years ago, I was brought into a company. They didn't have a corporate writer, so they didn't have anybody they didn't even have a communications. Like they had nobody that was writing their press releases, their blogs. They would just have they would have, but they didn't have like a dedicated person. So you would have just like the manager of such and such, and then the senior such and such from this department. And there was no consistent style. There was no sort of structure to any of it. And so they'd wanted a corporate writer, or a corporate copywriter, to kind of get it all set up and then hand it over to them so that, they didn't have that position created until they brought me in. So that I was like, okay, I'll create the style guide for you guys. I'll fix this. I'll have that. Here's the book. Here's the handbook that, somebody can just use. And then you just hand it to them and they go with it. Because a trained writer would understand that. Well, I would come in the morning. I would be on time. And then you'd have these new, millennials or whatever they were at the time. We're going back many, many years. Everybody was in cubicles. And there was this one girl who was very into the dating, dating apps weren't a thing back then. So I guess she would have been on, I guess was it dating websites? I don't even know what it was back then. Apps, definitely not. It was not apps because that was before the time of apps. Anyway, so she would come in the mornings and talk about the date that she had the night before. And it was always some loser. It was always some it was always just a nightmare. It was always just the most dramatic and oh my God, I couldn't wait to get out of there. And I realized that you tell those kinds of stories because you either want the laughs or you want the attention or whatever. I'm sitting here, a grown man at the time. I'm trying to think. I wasn't married yet. But, as the judgy gay guy of the office, I was kind of sitting there going, she actually really sounds like a fucking moron. I don't think that this is anything sort of it's not entertaining. If anything, it's entertaining because you're just sitting here going, why does she come in and just say that she had loser date after loser date after? I mean, it was always the guys, right? It was never anything that she ever did. It was never anything, but it was always just, oh, well, he wore this, or he, said this, or he ordered this, or he walked like this, and just the petty, superficial bullshit. And it's everything inside me was do you get why you're striking out? Do you get why you're still single? But I didn't, kept my mouth shut. So it was things like that where I would just, she would come in 10 minutes late and then she would just stand at somebody's cubicle and it would just be the gossip session. And I'd look at the time and go, oh my God, it's fucking 8:30. So she's 10 minutes late. She's been standing there for 20 minutes. I think there was once or twice where I kind of just did say, as a writer, sometimes I didn't want to do headphones or whatever, but it's you kind of need quiet if you're editing something, just because I'm reading the words, but then I'm hearing other words. And so if you're not 100% focused, you won't be able to kind of stick with it. And so, and it's not a skill. It's just kind of if I'm not into it, and which I wasn't into their industry, I had no interest in it. So for me, I couldn't get locked in. If it was something that I had an interest in, let's say I'm editing, an entertainment script because that's my thing. No, I would not hear anybody around me because I like it and that's what it is. But again, why should I have to put on headphones just to tune you out? How about you have a volume that's respectful of the other workmates, and we wouldn't have an issue. But instead, I was the bad guy, right? Because I was shushing the fun. And I remember going, wow, I hate working in an office because you have, again, so many different personality types that just clash. Now, I wasn't too much older than them, but again, we were just on, different levels. I think, was it last week on the show when we were talking about back to school time or whatever? And I just said, I wasn't a fan of kids when I was a kid. I always just felt that either I was, too grown up, or that they were just too immature, or I was doing job placements. I was doing, some pretty adult things. I got along better with adults than I did with kids. And that's also why my career started as early as it did. So, in a workplace, you have, there's the loud person, or the loud laugh, or the person who's, constantly late, or the person who's always bitching about being busy, but then you look and go, why are you looking at the sports scores, buddy? You complain about being overworked and underpaid and so much to do, but I fucking walk by your screen and you've got headphones on and you're watching the game highlights from yesterday, right? So that's something where I don't, if I was just sort of an observer and walking through. So case in point, a couple of years ago, a company had called me and wanted me to host their internal podcast for them. So this was going to be a communication tool. They had offices across Canada. And so one of the reasons they wanted the podcast was because we're not all in the same country. We're not all in the same city. They were all in the same country. They weren't all in the same. Well, that's not true though. They did have offices in the United States, but mainly in Canada. But they wanted this to be kind of we're one company, and I think that was actually their slogan, was one and then the company name. So that was their mantra. We're all one. And so this podcast was going to feature people from, each of the cities, each region that they had an office in Canada. And it was a really cool idea. And so being an outsider, like it was a contract thing. I was not an actual employee. Like I was not there Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, whatever. That wasn't my thing. I would come in, I would work with they had a video guy who was the one that was looking at the sports scores, by the way. They had him who did videos, but then he was also the audio guy for the podcast. They just kind of stuck him on the podcast as well. And then there was a marketing manager who, it was his idea to have this podcast. He was fired before we even started it. So he was just not very good at being a manager, and that was something that their team had said, even kind of, that was actually, I think I heard that the first day when I was kind of, like your first day at a job, everybody is sort of doing the niceties and, they're censoring themselves. They're not, saying anything. And then by day 3, 4, you're getting the lowdown. Like that's when you're pulled, you're having one-on-ones with people and you're kind of sitting there when people are like, oh my God, it's just, it's pretty bad. Or it's not really organized. Oh, yeah, so. And so they were doing that from day 1 when I first came in and met these people. And I thought, that's interesting that this guy leads the team and nobody likes him, but whatever. So it was his idea to do this podcast. And I know just from the meetings that I had with him, I would come in, we would have however long the meeting was. Let's say it was scheduled for an hour. It runs an hour and a half. And you'd leave the meeting and go, I don't know that we really accomplished anything, did we? I don't know that anything was actually decided. I don't know that leaving this meeting, this should be where, okay, you've got this, you do that, I'll work on this, let's reconvene next Monday, okay, go team. It wasn't that at all. Like there was nobody that was taking the reins, everybody was kind of looking at this manager going, like almost waiting for him to designate, like almost waiting for him to say, okay, so you do this, or okay, and make a decision, but he just never did that. And so before we even got the podcast, like I probably had how long did we do it? Maybe 10 or 11 months. I would come in. I think that we had agreed upon doing it on either Wednesdays or Thursdays. I don't remember. So I would be coming in, I wouldn't start first thing in the morning. I'd come in, maybe about 11 o'clock or whatever, because I was still doing my morning radio stuff at the time. So, I would come in, a little bit later. I would roll in and we'd have either the group meeting, because that's when I showed up, or, check emails and see what people are saying. But yes, almost 10 or 11 months. And when you think about launching a podcast, like you'd think that they had done a whole bunch of planning even before they called me. Okay, we want to do a podcast. This is what it's going to be. This is how it's going to be structured. Like you don't have to be a broadcast production person to kind of you felt that you needed a podcast. So you've obviously thought about what it's going to be and what it's going to have on it. I can help you sort of smooth it out and, kind of get things rolling. But you have to tell me the concept of what you're wanting this actually to be. No. They didn't even have that locked in. So, they prematurely brought me in. Then, so they fired this guy. They fired the manager. And then I ended up just going to whoever it was, I guess. Obviously they didn't have another manager right away. So then, it was kind of like, okay, team, you go to this person temporarily until we find somebody. I don't remember who it was. But I just remember it was a woman. I don't know what her role was. But anyway, so I just remember going to her and saying, okay, so you guys brought me in here because I'm the broadcaster, because you know who I am, you know what I've done, you've heard me on the radio, you've heard my podcast, you've seen me in the newspaper doing a video series, so, can I just take control of this? And she's like, yep, go for it. We had the podcast, a pilot, a demo, done, within 3 days. Because they just said, go for it, run with it, and we loved it, and there we go, and now we're recording. So, it's interesting because, again, like I said, you have these people who are, they're all bitching about the boss, and they're all just bitching that he doesn't make a decision, which it was maddening because I can attest to that. I witnessed it. But then you have, like I said, the video guy they made us a little studio in another building of their, on their property. And they turned an old office kind of into a studio. And so when we were there taping, it would be him and me pretty much the entire day. So if it was Wednesday that we were taping it, he would come in at 8 o'clock or whatever time he started, and then I would come in for 10 or 10:30, 11 o'clock. I would either just meet him there, or I'd go to the main building where he was, his section was, and then we'd just walk over. But we would spend, pretty much the entire day together. And that's all he would do was just bitch about how, he's underpaid, and this person makes this much. It's like, but you also don't do the same thing as that person. You also don't really have experience. And I didn't have the heart to tell him that, I'm being paid, basically, well, nah, I'm not going to get into that. But yeah, it was well over like $50,000 a year just to come in and tape one podcast, I think every 2 weeks, I think we were doing it. So let's say that I worked 52 days because 1 day a week, I was basically coming in there and getting $1,000 a day. And I wasn't even doing a full 8-hour day. But there were other times where we would do the podcast. We would go to their other cities. And so I would fly out in the morning with him. So we'd be on like the 5 a.m. flight. And then I would fly back that night. So, I did a, full day if we were doing a production kind of a thing. But otherwise, I almost wanted to say that to him because, he was just forever bitching. And then you ask somebody like that and say, well, have you asked have you talked about a raise? Have you approached anybody? Or you're just kind of bitching every single fucking day on the sidelines? Because they don't just go and say, hey, can you come over here for a second? Because we want to give you a shit ton of money, okay? Just, no, it's either during your review time or if it's bonus time or whatever it is. There's certain key times when they give you more money, but you doing this every day, and then at the same time with your giant headphones and everybody walking by sees that you're watching sports. I mean, do you look at that and go, he's a really good worker, we should pay him more? No, that's not happening. It's just not. So office politics has always been very interesting to me. And I know as much as I say to people and they don't believe it, we don't have that here. We don't have competition. We don't have our producers going, well, I'm a better producer. Oh, she doesn't produce her show. We have a no drama zone. If you're causing shit, if you're shit talking, you're going to either say it to the person's face because we'll trash talk each other in the same room. There's not one meeting that goes by at this company where there's not some sort of insult, bad word, derogatory comment, dirty comment. And if you're a snowflake, you're never going to work for us. Ever, ever, ever. If you're a millennial or if you're one of these prissy kind of, he called me a name, he hurt my feelings. Fuck right off. You're not working for us. Not going to happen. And that's the thing is that we can run our workplace any way we want. Everybody's cool with it. We've all been together so long. I don't know how many times Bonnie has slapped my ass, poked me in the side, how many times Raylene's had breast cancer, so she's got fake boobs. How many times I've grabbed one of Raylene's, tits, walk by, or she's pulled one out and just put it on the office or in the meeting room table. I mean, that's the kind of office that we thrive in. We're cool with that. There's nobody, if anything, if your feelings are hurt by something, we're going to go in twice as hard. By the way, that's actually something that I would do with Bonnie when we worked at the publishing company, where if I said something and, it pissed her off or whatever it was, and I knew that it did, I was going in 7 times harder, 10 times harder, 14, 32 times harder because I knew that she was pissed off by it. That's just how we are. And you know what? Like I said, here we are still together 20 years later. So you tell me whose workplace is more fun. Okay. We're going to take a break, one more break, and then we'll wrap things up on the Scribble.
Ever had something to get off your chest but never had the balls to say it? That's a load of crap. Speak Free with JB.com is exactly what you've been waiting for. Your chance to tell it like it is and not care what anybody else thinks. Have your say on issues of the day. Join newspaper and radio columnist Jeremy Bradley as he tells it like it is. Hundreds of thousands of people have stopped by, including some well-known celebrities who have had a chat with JB and speak candidly about what's really going on in the world. You can join them too. Have a rant or a rave. Be brave and head on over to www.speakfreewithjb.com now.
Who are the Kardashians feuding with now? What did that little thug Justin Bieber do this time? Who's getting hitched? And who's headed for Splitsville? Hear the latest celebrity news and gossip every day on Entertainment Wrap-Up. The good, the bad, the ugly, but mostly the ridiculously hilarious. It's all recapped in this daily segment at entertainmentwrapup.com. Have a laugh at the expense of the rich and famous when they take themselves way too seriously. It's 3 minutes of time-wasting fun at entertainmentwrapup.com. Check out Entertainment Wrap-Up at entertainmentwrapup.com. Brought to you by Speak Free Books.
We hear you chirping. Get scribbling. Tweet up the Scribble at The Scribble Show. Join the discussion with Jeremy Bradley. It's all going down right now on Twitter at The Scribble Show and at thescribbleshow.com.
We're out of time, but tell me the most obnoxious thing about your workplace. Send me an email live at jbonair.com, live, L-I-V-E, at jbonair.com. My name is Jeremy Bradley. This is The Scribble. Thank you so much for tuning in. I will talk to you same time, same place next week. Don't have a case of the Mondays. Bye-bye, everybody.
Want more Scribble? Check out thescribbleshow.com for past shows, celebrity interviews, cheapskate tips, and more. That's at thescribbleshow.com and on Twitter at The Scribble Show. The Scribble is a speak-free media presentation.
If you want some